welcome to the latest episode of the show. And today I've got a guest with me that's, yeah, I guess you could say it's famous for covering Formula E. And yes, seems to be doing quite well at the moment. And I always enjoy reading her stuff. And yeah, her name's Jodie Saxon. First of all, Jodie, thanks for your time.
No, thanks for having me. It's cool to come on and chat about what I love.
Yeah, there's so many questions that I want to ask as well, but there's one that it's probably repetitive, but it's always one that I like asking because I like to find out how people got into motorsport and how they started watching. So, how did your introduction to motorsport start, and how did that come about? Because I believe you didn't start watching until, was it 2019 or 2020?
Yeah, I mean, 2020 was really the year I started paying attention to motorsport, and that was mostly because a friend online who I knew through having like the same favourite band as her, she literally just sent me a message going, "You need to watch F1 this year. Here's a playlist of race highlights and memes and explainers. Just go nuts." And that's really where it started, but both my dad and my brother have been into motorsports for years, since like before I was born. So it feels a bit bad saying like that they weren't the reason I got into it. It was someone on the internet.
Yeah, I mean, I believe your dad was. He's always been into, because I haven't met him like in person, but I know of your dad, and he's been into oval racing in the UK for, I'm not sure how long, but it's been a long time anyway. So was
Yep.
there did they ever did they ever try and get you into watching oval racing to kind of get you in as a kind of, I don't know how to explain, how to basically get you into motorsport and kind of like get that fix, if you like.
I remember as a kid going to like some of the tracks and stuff and watching some of it, but I think I was too young to really realise what I was watching, and for me it was just like a fun day out and I get a hot dog at the end of it, so.
Yeah, that's sort of similar to my background as well. When I got into watching oval racing, it was because my uncle, he knows a family that's been racing for, trying to think, probably since the mid to late '80s, and they've been racing for a long time. So it's kind of, I got into watching through basically like a family connection, if you like, basically because he used to sponsor them and still does from time to time, but kind of introduced me and basically took me over, used to take me over to like their garage during the week, and just kind of like watching them as a kid, just what kind of like working on the cars, setting them up, and it's kind of, that's how my my interest started. And it was a as it wasn't through my uncle, it was through my mum that got me involved. Actually, she was sort of saying to me, though, you might enjoy this, and basically said to my uncle, do you fancy taking him and see what he thinks about it? And pretty much I've been hooked ever since.
It is cool how like family is often kind of the thing, and I know a lot of people who it's like their family's got them into it, so. And I do still like to watch races with my dad, even though he's kind of more into his NASCAR nowadays, so every Sunday
Yeah,
night he's set up at the computer. I'm at mine watching something else.
yeah, I'm the same. I mean, I don't watch NASCAR as much as I used to, but I've always been a big IndyCar fan, so that's what I always grew up watching, and pretty much since then I've been uh, pretty much, I've kind of talked about it from time to time. I've always been a big Scott Dixon fan, and since I got into watching IndyCar, which was back in, I think 2000, 2001, I think, or yeah, 2001 was my first full season of watching IndyCar, and again, just been a fan ever since. So, is there any other series that you watch, as well, really like, the basically, I guess, I know you cover Formula E, you watch Formula E, but is there anything else that you watch?
Um, I'm kind of one of those that like if there's any racing on the weekend, I will just get stuck in with it. You mentioned like before we started recording, we were just chatting about the World Endurance Championship, and
Yeah.
I always try to keep up with that and the European Le Mans series, just anything, and British touring cars, British GT, anything that's in the UK as well. So I can kind of look at our home talent as well as what's going on globally.
Yeah, I mean, I'm the same. I watch when I get a chance. I'd probably say the WEC is not the. I mean, I still watch it, but I'd say IMSA is probably the main series I watch, just because that was the first series I got into when I first started watching sports car racing and endurance racing in general. It was, and I've been a fan ever since. And then other series I've watched and kind of spread my wings, if you like. I try and watch the European Le Mans series as much as I can, and also the GT World Challenge Europe, or the other one they call it as well, is the Intercontinental GT Challenge, or whatever it's called. So
Too
I kind
many
of
words in them.
yeah, I try to keep up, but yeah, I'm the same. I like to try and kind of like spread my wings and watch a bit of everything. I have tried watching Formula E from time to time. I've talked about with you, and also a few other people that in the group chat that we're part of. But it's more, like I said, trying to keep an interest. It's always been a trouble of mine. Just not as in a like I don't like the series, but it's just kind of just too bit. It just for me it felt too hard to describe, too gimmicky, I feel like.
Yeah, I've got that at points sometimes when when they used to have fan boost and stuff, and the car swaps, and it's kind of looking back, you think, yeah, it worked to get attention, but you see why people thought it was rubbish and stuff.
Like, and give me a second. I think yeah, also as well, like you mentioned that you've attended the other series as well. I guess you mentioned, I think you've attended the British Touring Car Championship. I think you've attended the media day before.
Yeah, I did the British GT Media Day last year, which was really just kind of a chance for me to meet up with a lot of people and see the cars up close for the first time, because I'd never had the chance to.
Yeah, how was the media day? I mean, I think if I'm correct, the media day was pretty much open to everyone, and it was free entry, so it was pretty much just turn up and walk in whenever you feel like it.
Yeah, I mean, I had a friend picking me up from Milton Keynes train station, so I think I got up at about 6 o'clock. My dad gave me a lift into Manchester and I got the train down. And we just sort of walked around the track, watched the cars, chatted absolute nonsense about motorsports. And
And then
it was just quite fun. I suppose if I was more into the sports car media side of things, I would have used it as the chance to speak to drivers. But as it was, I was just kind of happy to be there.
yeah, I mean, it's something I would love, something I might next year anyway. I might look into trying to make it down for the media day, just to kind of, because I would love to try and get down to England and watch some other series like BTCC or British GT. GT is probably the one that I've always wanted to go and watch the most, because it's just I've always been a big GT racing fan, and I've always enjoyed watching it on YouTube. But yeah, just trying to get the time off work or just trying to make it down, it's always been a problem. But yeah, hopefully next year that'll all change if I pass my driving test in time, or basically pass my driving test this year at some point. So that's a plan anyway. But I think when it comes to visiting series in England, I think the European Le Mans series this year is the one that I would like to try and make it down to, just because it's, after watching it last year, is basically I just basically watching it, I was like, I need to get down in and watch it in person.
I did the same, and the moment the tickets came out, I immediately bought them. And then I was like, I will worry about hotel and transport after I've got the tickets.
And then I think go back to the like oval racing as well. Have you had any plans to attend any with your dad this year, or is it just more? Are you more focused on covering Formula E and just maybe basically more kind of like, do you get more enjoyment out of visiting the like British Touring Car Championship and British GT? Is that more Is that more your thing? If that makes sense.
Yeah, I think because so I work in retail and my shop's open 7 days a week. And even though there's three members of staff, we all have to kind of do our fair share of the weekends. So the weekends I can get off, I tend to like focus them on like my Formula E, and because I'm going to two races in person. Well, four races because they're double headers. And then there's a couple of others that I've booked off just because I want to be able to make sure I'm there to watch it live. But I do know I am going to be missing the Monaco E-Prix, which I'm kind of gutted about. But
Yeah, because I think have you been to Monaco before, or have you? I think you've covered it. I'll say you've reported it on it at least.
yeah, I've not been to Monaco yet. I think maybe next year. It depends where it falls in the calendar and whether it's too close to other races I'm going to or not.
Yeah, and I think Formula E. I think I would love to try and get back into watching because I believe I think it was you, and I think it was you, and I can't remember if Nicole mentioned it as well. Who's part of the group chat? I think there's a new car on the way. I think is it the Gen 4? If I'm correct.
Yeah, the Gen 4, it's going to be such a huge leap forwards for Formula E, and they've been doing testing of it, private testing, and in the future they'll be doing some more public events, and I think it's just I've not heard a single negative comment from any of the drivers compared to like I remember when the current car, the Gen 3 car came out, and there was a lot of people going, well, yeah, it'll do. But
Yeah.
this Gen 4, it's going to be huge for Formula E and for motorsports as a whole as well. I think people will take electric racing a little bit more seriously when that comes out.
Yeah, and talking about the Gen 4 car as well, I'm guessing is this basically is it like a new car? Is it a completely new car like built from the ground up? If you like, is it more kind of like there's nothing being carried over or any? Is it basically like brand new? Everything's kind of like basically there's nothing being carried over from the Gen 3 car.
Yeah, so like visually they're so different. The Gen 4 looks more like a traditional single seater. The Gen 3, it's got that very triangular look, like a Dorito. And I think as well they're getting a new tyre supplier, so I think they're switching from Hankook to, I want to say Bridgestone. I think it's Bridgestone. We might have to check that one.
Yeah, I was quickly reading something about it last night. I think it could be Bridgestone, but I'm like yourself. I would need to go back and double check that. But yeah, I mean, kind of something I wanted to ask as well. What appeals you to watching the Formula E? I mean, I've kind of like I've read like various stuff. Some fans say like they don't like it. It's too like basically I don't. It's basically it's not. Some fans say it's not pure racing. Other people say it's like basically it's, if you're into electric racing, it's probably the best series to watch at the moment.
Yeah, I mean, because of the way the strategies work with the attack mode and the pit boost, there's a lot of overtakes that don't really mean anything at the time. And so I know like sometimes when Formula E has boasted that, oh, we've had like 500 overtakes in Monaco, and everyone just rolls their eyes because they know most of them, they weren't for position. Especially when you get those kind of energy saving races where no one wants to lead and they're letting the others go past them. But I still quite like that because visually, as a spectacle, it is really cool to see when you're watching them and they're going like four wide into turn one. And rather than fighting to be in the lead, they're fighting to not be in the lead. It's kind of reverse racing almost.
Yeah, I'm kind.
And I know a lot of people, they're a bit like, oh no, I'd just rather have like an outright fight for the lead rather than playing the mind games they do in Formula E.
Yeah, I mean, it's something that it didn't put me off Formula E, but it's just like I mentioned, like when Formula E first came around, it was just I was never really a fan of a like fan boost because I just again it just felt too gimmicky to me. I was just yeah just not my thing. It felt too, and I'll probably get shot down for saying it by some fans, but it just felt too former. It just felt like it was trying to be a kind of a mini version of Formula One.
Yeah, because I think as well, like Formula E, they do listen to what people say a lot more than people think they do. And I vaguely remember kind of around the time, just before they got rid of it, they'd sent around a survey to ask people about, what do you think of Fan Boost? What do you think of this? And I'm assuming the feedback was negative, which is why they got rid of it. But as well, after last year, they introduced pit stops again with Pit Boost, and they sent us another feedback form at the end of the season. So, I think they've tweaked things accordingly, and I do think it is cool that they're willing to listen. They're trying things, but when they don't work and everyone's going, this is terrible, don't do that again. Even Formula E fans. I don't think I know a single Formula E fan who misses Fan Boost. Everyone's like, thank God that's gone.
Yeah, as soon as I heard that I remember chatting to you about it, asking you like saying I wasn't a fan of a Fan Boost, and you said that as soon as you said that they got rid of it, I was like, oh, thank God.
Yeah.
Because I kind of still keep an eye on it, but not as much as I should. So I think when the Gen 4 car comes around for is it next season? It's basically coming to the track.
So at the end of this year, it'll start with season 13.
Yeah, I look forward to that, and I think season 13. That's absolutely flew. that's absolutely flew by, because I remember back. When was the first season of Formula E? It must be going back about
2014. It started.
2014. Yeah, I was about to say.
Yeah.
Sorry, I was going to say 2015, but because I remember seeing videos when Formula E first came about, like when they were testing the cars at Donington Park, I think it was. And I liked the look of the cars, but I just had a feeling I just had a feeling that the racing would be good, but I just had that feeling of didn't want it to be kind of like go the way of other series that has happened to in the past. I didn't want it to be cost out of existence, if that makes sense. But I think it's good to see it's been still going for a long time, because that's that caught me by surprise when you said it was its 13th season. I thought it was only maybe like season 6 or 7, but I think on the one hand it's good to see that happening, because I think it proves that even though some people say that electric racing is boring, I think I think Formula E it still provides great racing. Yeah, you might not have anything like big shouty V8s or V12s or anything like that, but I guess like in its own way, Formula E can still provide good racing.
Yeah, I mean, because all the races, they're available to watch for free on the Formula E website, and so kind of when there's like the off season, I will go on, and I've been kind of slowly working my way through the early races. And sometimes I look at it and I think, yeah, this is why you have this reputation, because it used to be like that. But it's really weird when I watch those, because it's almost a completely different sport now. The only similarity is, Lucas Degrasse is still here and it's electric. Everything else is so different.
Yeah, I mean, I remember, has Lucas Degrasse been in Formula E since season 1, if I'm correct?
Yeah, he's still not competed in every race because he had to withdraw from one. I think it was the Cape Town E-Prix. There was some issue with like the Mahindra cars, so they had to withdraw them all. But other than that, I think he's been there for like every single Formula E race, which is incredible to think. It's getting on for 13 years now, and he's been there since day one.
Yeah, I was going to say, because I remember when he was part of season 1, and I think I know he's been, like you say, he's been around in the series for a long time, and I think I remember when he first raced in the series, like when it first started, I think he was racing with I don't know if they're still around in Formula E or not. I think it was App Audi or something like that.
Yeah, they're sort of still here because they're with Lola Yamaha, But I think from next year they're leaving, and it's just going to be Lola Yamaha, no abts.
Okay, and then moving on to a try to think. Yeah, basically, like I guess I've kind of covered events that you've attended, but is there any events that you plan to attend in 2026? Obviously, I believe you're planning to attend the Formula E race in Berlin.
Yeah, you've probably heard me and seen me talking about the zoo. I'm really excited to go to the zoo. But yeah, so that should be my first like international race leaving the UK for. And then other than that I will be at the London E-Prix again, which I did
Yeah,
last year, so I kind of know my way around that one now.
yeah, the London E-Prix. I think, if I'm correct, that's is that an indoor race or is that an outdoor race?
Both. So
Ah, because
the
I've seen
pits,
pictures of it.
paddock and everything. Yeah.
I've seen pictures of it. Like some of it's like inside, and then other parts of it's like outside. I'm like, that's cool. It's kind of it probably sounds silly of me saying it, but it kind of gave me that kind of like a like go kart kind of like indoor go kart vibe sort of thing. I don't know. I know it's a silly analogy, but it's just kind of as soon as I saw it, it's the first thought it came to my head.
Yeah, it is like that. I think one thing that's really surprising, and I think the London track really shows it because it's quite echoey, is the cars are actually quite loud. You know, you think they're electric, they're not that loud, but when you've got there was 22 when I was there, when all 22 of them are rushing towards that first turn and they're echoing, the tyres are screeching, you know, the cars are screaming, it's actually really loud, and for a moment you're like, whoa, there's no way electric cars can be that loud. But yeah, I think this is supposed to be the last time they'll race at London, I think. I've sort of heard they're looking at places like Brands Hatch to go to. So it'll be a shame to lose that kind of really unique indoor-outdoor thing, but Brands Hatch is a plus.
Yeah, and when you went to the London race as well, were you actually on location reporting, or did you was there like a kind of like did you go to like a location that was close to the track?
So I was attending as media, but I still had a grandstand ticket, so I did a couple of sessions like watching from the grandstands just to get a feel. But then you go to like the other end of the XL, go up a million broken escalators because they were never working, and then eventually you'd find the media centre. So we were still kind of on site, but the time it took you to walk between the track and the actual media centre, it felt like you weren't. But at least we had screens and free food, which was very helpful.
Yeah, and you talk about being part of the media as well. I think I can't remember the term for it. Is it media accreditation or whatever, something like that? Or basically you're
Yeah.
kind of basically you have to apply for like a media, I guess, like a media pass if you want to do that sort of thing. Or and if so, do you have to go through like a process? So, for example, do you have to send like a, I don't know if resumes or CVs like the right terms to describe it, but basically kind of like send in some of your work saying this is what I do, and basically I would like to be part of the media. This is basically some of my work that I've done. If you want to have a look.
Yeah, pretty much. They have a little portal because they have a virtual media centre where we have like the bank of all the photos and stuff. And on there's a little portal where you kind of fill out your details and stuff like, upload a photo to go on your pass. But then you also, like you said, you have to provide like examples of your work and because for mine, I think I have like I did a document that shows kind of I do analysis, race reviews, previews, interviews, and then I have another one that kind of shows how many people read them, how much reach I have on social media and stuff, and just kind of trying to let them know that like I'm here and I'm trying to do my best. Please let me in. So fingers crossed they let me in this year.
So and then basically, I guess once you've done that, it's just a case of waiting to find out if you've been if you've got like a or basically been successful, and basically if you have basically I guess on the day when you get there, that's when you go and collect your media pass, or do they send it out in say in the post, for example?
No, so you kind of find out within like a week or so before. They don't give you much kind of notice in advance. But yeah, once you get there, you have to do some safety stuff to do with like, the electric cars, and because you're in the paddock areas, making sure you're not just going to throw yourself in front of a forklift truck or something. But yeah, they have a little tent on site and you just go and collect it. I think, hang on. If it wants to come down. There's mine from season.
Oh, that's awesome.
London E-Prix, yeah. And so they have like a different design each year. It's very dusty. They have a different design each year, so you can't just turn up to every race. And yeah, it's got my a little picture of me on the back.
Oh yeah. Oh, so yeah. How or basically when you done that for the, I'm guessing that was the first time you've ever you've been on site, if you like, doing reporting. How was it? How was that experience? Was it kind of, I guess when you got there, was there kind of like nerves to start off with, just because you've never done it and never reported in person, and or is it kind of just like basically you turned up and it's like, I'm getting a chance to report in person and basically reporting on something or reporting on a series that I love?
Yeah, it was kind of a mixture of both. I felt very unprepared because I didn't expect to get in. So I hadn't planned any interviews or anything because I thought, oh, they're not going to let me in. I just post online, and then I did get in. And then, I knew a lot of people there because I know them online and we chat a lot, so I just sort of sent a text to someone being like, can you come pick me up from the fan zone? Because I don't know where I'm going. And so It was the Tyler who runs the Formula E Source account. He came downstairs and collected me and sort of showed me where stuff was, and that was on the Friday. And then on Saturday, I watched the race and then stood under the podium, and about 10 minutes later I was in the media pen interviewing David Beckman. And that was my first ever interview, so I think I threw myself in at the deep end a bit. I know most people, they start small, small interviews. No, I was in there with World Championship with a driver who'd just finished 11th and wasn't very happy about it, so that was quite terrifying, but I did it. And then the next day I did it again with a few more drivers, so I feel a bit more prepared for next year when hopefully I'll have more planned out interviews before the weekend.
Then you're talking about interviewing David Beckman as well. Obviously, he wasn't happy. Kind of, how did you? Because I remember asking this question on another episode that I recorded with Ryan Marine, who commentates on SRO and GT World Challenge America, and I asked him the same thing. How do you approach a driver, or how approach a driver that's not maybe in the best of moods and not had the best of races? Was there any approach that you used? Were you kind of like courses, or just said to yourself, just be kind of like, just watch what you ask or watch what you say, just in case because obviously when drivers have a bad race, they might be full of adrenaline, so they might say something, or might say to you like, go away and I don't want to speak right now? Or is it just a case of like, go up and ask if is it okay to interview you, or would you rather have some space to just maybe cool down?
I think the positive with Formula E is there's quite a big gap between the race finishing and the media stuff starting. So it was kind of like the race finished around 6, and then you've got the podium and all that stuff, and I think it was getting on for about 7 o'clock when the drivers actually turned up. And so I think by that point, most of them, they've kind of calmed down. They've had a little briefing from, the team's press people, just to say like, hey, don't talk about this, say this if they ask that. So, and as well, when they're in that media pen, they're there to be interviewed. If they don't want to be, they will just sort of hide at the back. But, David, he was stood at the barrier of it. He was being interviewed by, I think it was the German TV crew at the time when I turned up, so after they finished, I just slipped in before he disappeared, and I only really asked 3 questions because I thought I don't want to keep him long, and with it being my first time, I didn't want to overdo it. So I think it was just that kind of thing of knowing he had the time to kind of simmer down. I think if I'd asked him immediately after getting out of the car, he probably wouldn't have been as able to string sentences together, you know?
Yeah, kind of. Obviously that's your first interview. Was there any? Obviously, you might be slightly nervous, but was it kind of? Were you kind of hesitant at first, or was it just a case of like, did you say to yourself, I may as well just kind of like push myself out of my comfort zone, if you like, and just stay kind of like basically, because it's one of those, it's a phrase that my mum always used to say to me as well. Basically, she was like, "Oh, if you don't ask, you don't get," sort of deal. So was it just kind of like, "Yep, I'll just push myself out of my comfort zone, or just throw myself into the deep end and just see how it goes"?
Yeah, I mean, when I first walked out and saw how many people were there, I was thinking, oh, there's no way I can do this. Because I've always been quite quiet, and when I was younger, I was a lot more shy. And I don't think I would have ever have dreamt of even going to London, never mind going and doing interviews. But I just sort of said to myself, I was like, I've spent the money to come here. People at Formula E have made sure that I'm media, that I'm not just sat in the grandstands. So the least I can do is try my best. And it also helped to remember as well that, like, everyone else who's there, they once had a first interview, they once had a first media pen. So, they will have all felt the same at some point, so there's no point, letting that get to me. I just thought, if I throw myself into it, then I've done it, and I can do it again after that.
Yeah, I'm making my first trip to the 24 Hours of Le Mans next year, but I've also just recently planned a trip to the 24 Hours of Daytona in January next year, and it's something I spoke about with Nicole from the Orange Flag podcast. I was saying, like, I would love to go up and like interview drivers, or kind of not like interview them for say like 20 minutes or something like that. Maybe just some kind of a couple of quick questions, or just a couple of minutes of their time. And I kind of said to her that I always, because I've even been open about it in the group chat that we're part of. That basically I suffer from like really bad anxiety sometimes, so it's kind of like in the back of my mind. I want to go up and I want to go up and ask questions, but another thing in my mind is saying to me like, don't bother them. But it's kind of basically, I'm kind of like saying to myself that it's basically there's no harm going up to a driver if they're walking by and ask if it's okay to ask a couple of questions. So yeah, it's something that I've learned. I'm kind of learning as well, that basically like there's no harm in going up and asking. If they say no, if they say no, they're too busy, and then there's no harm done. And basically, it's another thing as well, is that basically sometimes it's one of those things that I've got to, I really should start pushing myself out of my comfort zone, the sort of deal.
Yeah, because I think as well, like, a lot of drivers, they do like to chat. And especially, I always find, from what Nicole said to me, like, the sports cars drivers, they're so willing to chat and, just help tell their story. And I think it's cool that, they're so open for that and you're able to go up. And, like I said, once I did my first interview, I walked into the others and I wasn't nervous. And so I think it's just that thing of, once you've got that first one done, you kind of feel a bit invincible and you can go and do the others.
Yeah, I mean, I think it's just like, because I've like obviously when I used to do it when I like at my local like oval racing track. I used to like ages ago. This is like back when I was a teenager. I used to go up and speak to drivers like with no issues, and basically like, I would chat away and just ask them how's it going tonight, and that sort of thing. Is it being good or being bad? And basically they were happy to chat away, but it's just more. I don't know why, it's just more recently over that. It was more. I think it was back in 2023 or 2023 I think it was. I was about to go up and chat to someone, and then basically it was just something in the back, kind of at the back of my mind, or something that just felt like someone was grabbing me and saying like, "Oh, don't go up and bother them." And it's like something I've always struggled with sometimes, and yeah, it's something that annoys me, but it's more I've kind of decided this year, or when I go to the Daytona next year, it's something that I'm definitely trying to push myself out of my comfort zone. But I think, yeah, like you say, I guess it's one of those things as well. When you start doing it, the more you do it, the more relaxed the more I do it, the more relaxed I'll be. So I think it's just a case of, and even Nicole said to me as well. Basically, she said, I can't remember what she said exactly, but she just said, like don't like force don't feel like you have to like go up to every driver and speak to them. Just kind of ease into it and just kind of like do it, kind of like basically just do it when you feel comfortable. Just kind of like you try and just basically kind of like stop being nervous and just relax.
Yeah, it's like I know someone. She's called Lucy. She has a vlog called Last Lap Lucy. She was at the Formula E in London, and she had a pretty cool strategy for the media centre, which was she had one question, just one question, and she asked every single driver that one question. So she didn't have to worry about like follow-up questions or, remembering where every driver finished. She just had this one question, and then she was able to put it all together in one big video. And I think that was such a cool way to do it because, I was sat there going, oh, if he says this, what am I going to respond with? And what happens if I just stare at him blankly? What's he going to do? Is he just going to leave? But yeah, so I think like getting those short little things is such a cool idea, and it's good as well for people who are watching or listening or reading. They get loads of information in short little spurts.
Yeah, because I remember I was watching Nicole's video from I think it was Daytona when she went around asking drivers. I think it was just like one. I think it was one question, but I could be wrong. She was asked. It was just basically asking like how many hours of sleep the drivers would get during the race, and I thought that was cool because it wasn't like loads of questions, but it's more like basically just what it was like one, like you say, like one question, but it's like loads of responses, different responses, and I find that kind of thing cool, and it's something that I would love to do. But again, like I say, it's more like an anxiety issue, not because I don't want to go up to like drivers and I don't want to go up to drivers and not speak to them, but it's more I don't want to bother them in case just in case they turn around and say like, oh, why did you want to speak to me, or something like that. But I think it's just a case of like basically just getting stuck in and just basically see how it goes. And yeah, if I mess up what I'm trying to ask, again, there's no harm done, or it's no big deal, because even the best like commentators have made loads of famous commentators have made bloopers. I mean, look at Murray Walker, for example. He was absolutely famous for having loads of bloopers.
Yep.
But yeah, thinking of basically as well, like what's the plans with like your blog as well, and also in general for 2026? Is it basically try and get to, maybe if you can't get to more events, is there plans to expand it? Is there any, for example, is there any plans to do maybe like a podcast, for example, kind of like say like reporting on the races that you've been, or is it more? Are you more than happy just to like do like blog blog reporting, if you like?
Yeah, I quite like just the writing part of it. I'm not usually very good at talking. I'm a lot better at writing than I am talking, but I'm hoping this year that I can, because I didn't just focus on Formula E last year, I was also doing Moto E, the electric motorbike championship, but they're not running that this year. They pensioned it off. They're replacing it with something else, so that's one less thing for me to do. But I was thinking I can replace it with a championship called the Next Gen Cup. The past few seasons they've been supporting DTM, and they're using kind of an all-electric, kind of like a mini, so it's almost like the mini challenge but electric, and it's aimed at junior drivers, so you've got people who are like 15 years old all the way to like in their 20s. And the races, they're incredible. These kids aren't afraid of a bit of rubbing, a bit of banging, you know. And I remember the other year there were so many finishes where it was like they were neck and neck over the finish line for the race win. So I'm hoping this year, when they announce their calendar, which, you know, I need to be able to see when they're racing, where they're racing, but hopefully be able to kind of do some reporting on that as well, because I have interviewed a couple of drivers and the guy that created the whole series, Frederick Lestrup, so it would be nice to kind of continue with the Next Gen Cup theme alongside Formula E, because I always like to have two different things, you know, something to take my mind off one, and when one's not running I can work on the other. So
Yeah, I mean, I think next gen, I believe, is that kind of like a, you say it's a support series to DTM, but is it? I guess it's is it kind of? I guess it's kind of like is it a feeder series to Formula E as well? So say if there's like young drivers that maybe want to try and take that step up to Formula E, is that a viable option, or are they better doing something like, maybe for example, like try to think of the open wheel series like Formula 4 or Formula 3 or something like that?
yeah, I mean, there's been a couple of drivers who've said they're interested in going up to Formula E, but I think the gap is so big going from kind of like touring cars to single seaters, and fast single seaters at that. So I think there have been a couple of drivers that they've come over to the UK and they've raced in GB4. I think the first champion of the Next Gen Cup did that. So I think it's kind of hard to make that pathway at the moment, but there is also that series that Nick Heidfeld has been promoting recently, the FG series. You know, he was at the Qatar Grand Prix last year talking to some of the Formula 2 and 3 teams about getting involved, and that's supposed to be kind of like an all-electric series that bridges that gap between, you know, Formula 4 and Formula E. But it's been in a state of coming soon for a few years, so I'm not sure if or when that'll happen, but it would be nice if we could have kind of a whole electric ecosystem going all the way up to Formula E.
Yeah, I mean, I've been surprised that there's not been a support series for Formula E. So that basically, like, yeah, it would still be Formula E, but kind of like I don't know what I would call it, but maybe something like I don't know, maybe something like like an electric version of, say, maybe like Formula, I don't know, Formula 2 or Formula 3, but something kind of like similar to Formula E, but like a kind of like a baby version of the Formula E car. So it's not as quick, but like young drivers can still jump in and basically go racing, if you like, and kind of like build their confidence up and get experience. And basically when they feel up to it, or when they come to that point, that basically, like, maybe if they won a championship in like a Formula E support series, that they could make that step up, maybe not in a race seat straight away, but get maybe like a kind of like a reserve driver or like development driver sort of a role, like simulator role, if you like, kind of just to like slowly build them up to get ready for a race seat, and basically have them at race weekends like they would have in Formula 1, for example, by kind of like just like watching what goes on and basically kind of getting them acclimatized, if you like.
Yeah, because I think with the Gen 4 cars coming in that we've spoken about, there's been a lot of people wondering, you know, what's going to happen with the current cars, the Gen 3 Evo. And so I know a lot of people have been suggesting that, you know, if Formula E takes all the cars back, they could make a support series, a junior championship, if they wanted to. And that would be really helpful, because I know Formula E, they do try and get lots of running for rookies. You know, in pre-season testing, we have the women's test. In Miami this year, we had rookie practice. In Madrid later this month, we've got the full-day rookie test. So there's quite a lot of opportunities for these rookie drivers to get out on track, but, you know, they're not doing it in full race conditions, so I think that's one of the tricky things for them, is finding a way they can drive these cars and it not just be doing 100 laps and that's it.
Yeah, I mean, it's, I guess, this is just my thinking, but I guess with what they could do with the Gen 3 car is basically kind of, instead of I'm not saying they would, but instead of like putting them to one side and basically not using them anymore, I guess they could use them in a way as kind of like a support series car, because basically, like, yeah, it might be like when they start using the Gen 4 next year, it'll probably be like a, I guess I don't know if like 1 season old or basically like an old spec car, but or not spec car, but basically old car. I guess they could use that in a way for like drivers to jump in and start getting some race experience, and again just kind of like building themselves up and moving them up through that system. But I, I guess it's I don't know if they have thought about having like a support series, but I guess it's one of those things that would probably just be a case of have to wait and see. But
Yeah.
I get, like I say, I'm surprised that they've never like brought in a support series like they have for, say, like Formula One or basically the British Touring Car Championship, with the like was it British Formula 4 or Formula 3? I can't remember what it's called because
Yeah, the
I've not.
F4.
So I'm surprised they've not had anything like that, kind of like an electric version of that, for example. But
Yeah,
I guess in one hand, on the other hand as well, I guess that they may have looked at it. I'm just guessing, but they might have looked at it and said like, oh, maybe this is not viable unless loads of teams were willing to like enter and sign up, if you like.
yeah, I mean, they used to have the Jaguar I-Pace trophy, which, another touring car style thing, and I do remember a couple of seasons ago they had actually announced that the Next Gen Cup was going to support them, but it fell through on like the Monday of the race week. It all went wrong, and no one's quite clear on what happened, so it is frustrating to see that they've tried, but at the same time, it's not always been something that can provide a pathway for the drivers from that support series to Formula E. Which, like, with Formula One, it's an obvious path. You go 3, 2, 1. But with Formula E, that pathway doesn't really exist, and at the moment, all the drivers are ones that are being stolen from Formula 2. Can't make it to Formula 1. Where do we go? Formula E.
Yeah, and yeah, I think it's one of those things as well with the drivers. Basically, they kind of like they come to that point in their career of like, basically, what do I want to do? Do I want to try and still make it to Formula One? Then, I mean, if you get into Formula One, some of the stories I've read and heard, it's basically like the sacrifices that have had to be made. It's just unbelievable, and I think it's one of those things that you've got to, I guess, in a way as well, with the sacrifice side of things. It's kind of like you've got to be like kind of like mentally ready to do that, because because it's so basically families probably put in like loads of money and having to, like, I've heard stories about I think it was Lewis Hamilton. I think I remember reading about his dad actually working 3 or 4 jobs, I think, just to try and make ends meet, and it was like, wow. And then basically in the end it paid off, because I think it was Ron Dennis from McLaren, or Ron Dennis, who was in charge of McLaren at the time, came on and basically picked him up and basically put him through, or supported him in karting by putting him through the McLaren driver program, I think it was at the time. But I would need to go back and double check that. But yeah, I think if drivers want to make it to Formula One, I think it's one of those things you've got to be pretty much willing to be like give everything up, or put sacrifices in place. But I think if drivers are kind of like hitting that barrier, if you like, and aren't making it to Formula One, then I guess Formula E or something like that is probably, it's always worth looking at, because there's been loads of drivers that have made it to Formula E and they've had loads of success.
And I think the tricky thing as well sometimes is, like, even when drivers do make it to Formula E, a lot of times their eyes are still on F1. We saw it with Nick de Vries. He didn't get the Formula One seat. He came over here. he won the championship, and then a couple of seasons later, he signed for a Formula One team, and it looks like great, cool. He's gone there, but then, you know, he didn't do as well as anyone wanted him to, and he really got chewed up and spat out by the system. You know, he didn't race for a year after that, and then, you know, he's come back to Formula E, and I remember he did a really lovely interview with Nick Golding from Racing News 365, where he was just talking about why he didn't immediately come back to racing and, you know, what happened with Formula One, why did it go wrong, and his thoughts about that. And it was quite heartbreaking, really, because, you know, these guys, they spend a fortune and they spend their entire lives working towards this thing. He finally achieved it, and, you know, it went wrong, and like I said, he was chewed up and spat back out by Formula One, so, you know, he's back here, and I think he's doing quite well again, so, you know.
Yeah, it's good to see him doing well, because I mean, I've always kept an eye on him. I think it was it wasn't Formula E I first came across him. Came across his name. I think it was, I can't remember what year it was. He made his debut at the 24 Hours of Le Mans. I think it was in LMP2 when he was racing with. I think I'm taking a guess. The team was called Racing for Holland at the time, and yeah, he was basically just watching him. And he was really quick on his debut, and it's that feeling you get in your mind. It's like, this is a driver that's worth watching. He's got like basically potential to do well in the future, and I think it's good to see him do well. Do well in the WEC racing in the hypercar with Toyota, because again, he's always been I've always rated him as a driver, and it's good to see him doing well at the moment in the WEC and also Formula E. And I think, yeah, I kind of, I said at the time as well that he never really got a proper chance with Formula One. I mean, I guess like people could say like, yeah, Formula One it's a business, or it's a results business. Yeah, you can say that, but you've got to remember, basically, he's basically coming from basically, or he was still a young driver basically, and you've got to give him a chance to kind of get acclimatized and kind of get comfortable with being in the Formula One paddock, because as most people know, but if you don't do well, or basically just in general, the Formula One business or paddock can be a ruthless place. But it's one of those things as well. But yeah, just kind of like, just before we finish up as well, what's been the best interview that you've gave for your what Jodie Wright's blog? I mean, I'm just looking at one of the interviews that you done ages ago. I think it was my favourite interview that you done, and I think I mentioned it ages ago to you as well. But I think it was the Pit Venanzi interview.
Oh yeah.
But I really find that cool, just some of the stuff I read in it, because just like how he got into racing I think it was 2018, he got into racing what was it, cross karts, I think.
Yeah, he was really interesting to chat to, and you know, I'm still in touch with him and through Instagram and stuff, because he'd raced in the Next Gen Cup, and that was how I came to know him. But yeah, and it was really interesting when I kind of asked him about, you know, who's your racing idol, and he was like, oh, I don't really have one. He was like, I like the cars, I like the racing, and I thought that's really cool, because you hear a lot of people who they'll idolise a specific driver, but for him, he's just like, you know, I want BMW to win, and I want to race with them at Daytona, and I thought it's really cool to speak to someone who's not got that kind of traditional entry into motorsports of having like, here's my favourite, I want to emulate my favourite.
Yeah, I mean, when I was reading about that, I found that interesting that he said that he didn't have a favourite driver or hero or idol or anything like that. It was more, I guess, it's kind of like, I guess as well, he had that, or got the mindset of I just like to get out there and race and just enjoy myself. Which I found cool, and I found also the other thing I found absolutely fascinating but cool at the same time was basically that that he uses sim racing to prepare as well, because I know that the sim racing has become since the pandemic back in 2020. It started just growing and growing and growing, and loads of teams and loads of drivers are using sim racing or simulators. It's back at their maybe like team headquarters to prepare for a track. And I think as well, I discussed it with someone else, a real life driver, on a previous episode, that sim racing as well. I find anyway, it helps drivers that have maybe not got like backing or big money behind them to get into real life racing. I mean, look at when you look at Max Verstappen, for example, and basically by the amount of times he talks about sim racing and how it's helped him, and how he's using that to help drivers get into real life racing, but racing with his own team, which is Verstappen.com, I think it's called. So I think sim racing. Some people talk down on it, saying like, oh, it's not real racing. It doesn't help you, and it's kind of yeah. When I hear that sort of attitude, I'm like, I want to say something, but I'd rather just bite my tongue and not getting into an argument.
Yeah, because I know it's like, it doesn't prepare them for stuff like the physical forces they're going to go through once they're sat in a race car. But, it helps them train their reactions, it helps them learn the tracks and understand the fundamentals of racing before being let loose in a car that could, if they mishandled it, they could cause major damage to themselves, the car, or someone else. And so I quite like it, especially seeing like this younger generation of drivers coming through, and they're getting those skills on there before they're going out on track, and they're using it to like hone their skills. Because there's something a little bit scary when you think of like, when you look at Formula 4 and they're putting like 14-year-olds in a single-seater car and letting them loose on a track. I'm thinking like, whoa, I remember what I was like at 14. I wouldn't trust me in a race car. I wouldn't trust me in a race car now.
Yeah, I'm the same. I think because one of the series I watched, but races in America, the Toyota GR Cup. But I remember when I first started watching that, I was thinking, oh, this will be like drivers that are maybe in their like mid to late 20s or early 30s, and then basically I hear some of the ages like basically like 15 or 16. I'm like, what? I was like, no
you
way.
Be at school?
I was like, should you not be in school or be in college or something like that? I'm like, wow. But I guess it's one of those things that most series take into account, that basically I don't know if young drivers have to, like maybe 14 or 15-year-olds, but maybe they have to sign something saying like, oh, you won't do this, or you've got to behave on track and not get into any trouble like fighting or anything like that. But basically, if you do anything silly or get into mischief, then basically we've got the right to take your license away from you until you're more ready to race on track, racing these cars in this series.
Yeah, it's like in Formula E. Obviously, I mentioned the rookie tests before. So Porsche announced their drivers for it, and one of them is this guy called Elia Weiss. And he did the Berlin rookie test for them last year. And he turned 16 about 3 weeks before this test took place. And I think he's now like the youngest person to have ever tested a Formula E car. And he's back again for it this month. He's still 16, and it's really weird whenever I see him, because you see the pictures and you're like, that's a child, and we're putting him in a Formula E car. But, I think Formula E, Porsche, they're really preparing for the next gen, because they're supposed to have 2 teams from next season. So I think they're kind of trying to work out who's going to be in that lineup.
Yeah, because I think I know Porsche's already got a team in the Formula E. I think is it the again I'm taking a guess. Is it their own like factory team, or is that under the? I'm probably getting the name wrong, but is it DS Penske or something like that?
No, so at the moment there's the Porsche Formula E team under their own name, and they also supply powertrains to Andretti and Cupra Cairo. And so DS Penske do exist, but they're Stellantis powered with DS, but I think from next year DS and Penske are going their separate ways. But no one's entirely sure who's powering Penske. But I still think Porsche Penske would have been cool, but I think it's
Yeah,
out of the question now.
I thought that. I've always thought that Porsche Penske in Formula E would just. I don't know. It's just kind of like one of those. It just has a ring to it, kind of like like
Yeah.
kind of a perfect team name. But yeah, unfortunately, I don't know if that'll ever happen. I mean, I can dream because Porsche Penske obviously I won't say them in the IMSA Championship and sports cars, and they raced in the WEC as well until unfortunately they pulled out at the end of last season because of just financial issues going on behind the scenes with the company. And yeah, I think even Porsche themselves tried to hide that story in a way at the end of the year, but it was kind of too late because it was pretty much out in the open with on websites like Sports Car 365 and Daily Sports
Yeah.
Car, and it was just there was just nowhere for him to hide. But it's still good to see them racing in IMSA. I guess it's not. But I just feel it'll feel weird seeing or watching the WEC with not seeing them on the grid. But I did hear a little rumor that they might be back in WEC as soon as 2027. How true that is, I'm not sure, but it's a case of wait and see. But yeah, before we finish as well, Jodie, is there anyone that you want to give a shout out or a thank you to for I guess getting you to where you are with reporting on Formula E? But obviously you've been at the Formula E Grand Prix in London, and also you're going to Berlin.
Yeah, I mean, probably Sean from Formula E because, it was he who reached out at the start of last year after I'd done some articles and basically asked if they could have them for the Formula E website and then commissioned a few more. So I think without, him reaching out, I don't think I would have had the confidence to carry on or go to a race as media and anything. So I owe a lot of it to him, but also I think just Formula E as a whole, they've really I don't know how much I can say about it, but they have really helped me and some other creators over the winter. They've put a lot of time into us to try and make sure that, we know how to do what we want to do. None of us are professionals at it. We're doing this in between our real life jobs. Some of them I know are still at school, so, it's great to see that, a world championship has been able to identify the people who are putting hard work in off their own back and find a way to help them and thank them. So, yeah, that's really cool. But other than that, it's just everyone who reads my stuff and puts up with me waffling about Formula E almost constantly. If you put up with that, you deserve a medal.
No, I've always enjoyed reading your stuff as well because I don't watch Formula E like regularly or keep up to date as much as I could or should, but it's more I'm one of those people that likes to kind of like read like other forms of motorsport and kind of like see read about what's going on. And I've always found that cool for like people, more and more people get into do like kind of like doing reporting and want to like to report on something that they love. Like yourself, you like to report on Formula E, and it's always I always find that cool. Just people like reporting on something that they love, and I think it's always good to see. And is there any socials that you want to promote as well?
My own?
Sorry, I should have said
Follow
your
me.
socials. My bad.
No, yeah.
Well, again, thanks for your time, Jodie. It's been an absolute pleasure having you on, and I hope for 2026 that basically you have a good time at the London Grand Prix as well, and and the Berlin as well, and look forward to keeping up to date and reading your stuff as the year goes on.
Yeah, no, thank you for having me. It's been great to chat.
And if anyone wants to keep up to date with the show, you can follow it on the Instagram at Satellite Racing Cast, Twitter or X at the Sat Racing Cast, and basically that's my socials as well. So, and also you can follow the podcast on Spotify as well. Where I just about forgot about that, which is bad of me. But yeah, thanks to Jodie for joining me as well, and yeah, look forward to welcoming new listeners in the future. So from me, from Jodie, bye for now.
Bye.